I've taken over 1,000 sales calls for my agency over the last few years. Here are the 5 steps that I use in my sales calls to turn cold prospects into paying clients. So over the last year, we've booked around 1,000 sales calls for our agency just through the likes of cold email and LinkedIn. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that we take the prospects in the sales journey to actually turn them from cold prospects who have never heard of us before to paying us $5,000, $8,000 and even $10,000 upfront to get started on their campaigns. If you also want access to the exact scripts that actually book us these calls, feel free to join my free school community down below. But this will work whether you're selling AI, lead generation, or any other type of B2B service. Now, the first step is all around building rapport with a prospect. As soon as they jump on the call, you want to make them feel like they're welcomed. You don't want it to be a hostile environment and you don't want people to have their guards up. So I usually spend just honestly the first 5 minutes building some rapport with them. Sometimes it's going to take a while to break them down to the point where they're actually open to speaking with you and communicating with you in a friendly manner, but it definitely is possible. Loads of people overlook this and they want to go straight into discovery or straight into pitching, but I think actually building rapport with your prospect is so important because there's so many people in this game, you need to know who to trust. And if you can build rapport properly with your audience and with your prospect, it actually means they're going to be more likely to trust you to be the one to deliver the solution. At the end of the day, people buy from people. So if you're a people's person and you can learn this skill, it means that you're more likely to actually get people to buy from you because they'll buy into you as a person rather than just your service. I noticed this a lot, especially in the early days of my agency, when I wasn't the most credible. I didn't have loads of case studies compared to other people in the market, but I genuinely cared about what other people, their experience and what they thought. So that made it much more likely for me to actually close deals when they had the feeling of confidence with me. If you have 5 minutes before the sales call, just do some research on your prospect. See their LinkedIn profile, go on their website, see if they have a YouTube, if they have Instagram or Facebook. You don't want to make it sound like you're a stalker, but anything that you can drop in, like for example, if you know they support a certain football team, if you drop that in, that's going to make the world of a difference. Once you've been going back and forth for a few minutes, you don't want this to last the entire call because you'll lose the frame of the sales call. You actually want to take them into the next part of the sales call, which is all going to be about discovery. I believe this is actually where the sale is made. And if you do this part wrong, you're going to have a lot of problems when it actually comes to objection handling and collecting the cash at the end of the call. If you do this right, it's going to make the whole process so much easier. So this is how we conduct discovery on our prospects. Effectively, you want to be data gathering. You want to be asking them specific questions around what they're currently doing for their marketing efforts or for AI if you're currently selling that. But ask what they're currently doing, where they're currently at in terms of their business performance, in terms of revenue, team size, margins, these sorts of numbers, and figure out where they want to be and where they want to get to. You want to ask certain questions about if they've tried anything like this before, what has worked, what hasn't, what lessons we can take from that, from their experiences. Ultimately, it's all about finding your ammunition so you can start building the gap and getting that close. Something we will do, for example, is ask if they're currently running any outbound campaigns, what the current results are, what their current reply rate is, what their current positive reply rate is, how many calls they're booking, looking at each of these metrics, and that's how we basically formulate our pitch. We know if there's a bottleneck in their current system, which 9 times out of 10 there will be, then we can tailor the pitch to that specific bottleneck, right? I'll get onto the pitch in just a second, that's the next part, but you want to ensure you have enough information in the discovery phase to make your pitch tailored to each prospect. You don't want to just seem like you're reading off a script, you want to make sure you get enough information to tailor the pitch to each prospect, and that's really the aim of this discovery part here. Once you have enough information around how much they're currently spending to acquire a customer, what their lifetime value of a customer is, and all this other information you need to make the sale, then you can actually move on to the third stage, which is building the gap, right? You should have asked specific questions in the discovery part around where they're currently at and where they want to be. Then what we want to do in stage 3 is start to build this gap and lengthen this gap, right? We want to ask them specific questions in terms of why aren't you where you want to be right now? What's currently holding you back? What things have you tried that hasn't worked, right? Effectively, we want to make them feel pain around their current situation and more desire around where they want to be. The better we can build this gap, the more easy the sale is going to be. Just keep asking specific targeted questions because at the end of the day, if the prospect knew how to do this, they would already be there and they wouldn't be on this call. So they genuinely need your help if you can provide the solution that's going to help you bridge that gap. We just need to make this clear to them. I personally like to ask questions such as, if you currently keep on doing what you're doing, are you ever going to actually achieve this goal? right? And what needs to change in order for you to achieve this goal. It's a lot around self-realization. Oftentimes, prospects don't even know what they need to change in order to hit the goals. So it's your job to bring them with you on this journey to realize what they actually need to change and what they need to take action on in order to achieve their goals. Once you've successfully built this gap, the prospect will pretty much confess that they can't get there themselves, right? And they need some sort of help. This has happened numerous times on my calls where people just jump on and be like, well, look, I understand the questions you're asking. If I could have done this myself, I would have already be there. That's the reason I'm on this call. And this is exactly where you want your prospects. This is a strong position to be in. And this is exactly where I'd move on to stage 4, which would be pitching a no-brainer offer to the prospect. Have a short, concise pitch that isn't lengthy and go on to talk about the exact details of what it is you offer. For example, we will guarantee you 30 calls in the next 30 days with your qualified prospects. And if they don't show, you don't pay. Is this something you'd be interested in? Try and get a small chain of micro commitments and yeses that will lead up to the big yes, right? Inevitably, once you start saying this pitch, people are going to start asking for the price. Okay, and that is where I would do the price drop. I wouldn't go into the price too early necessarily, only when people actually feel comfortable with asking. But ensure they do ask. And if they don't ask, I would honestly probably just pitch the price right at the end as well. You want to make sure you actually get to the price because this is when the real objections come out. So go with that pitch and say the price when they ask. Just say the price and be silent. So for example, we could guarantee you 30 sales calls in the next 30 days and you don't pay a penny if they don't show up. They'll go, okay, yeah, sounds great, but like, how much does this cost? And then you'd reply with something like, this system costs $8,000 in full, and wait for them to reply. And I tend to go with a question, how does this sound to you? Right? It's very non-salesy, it's not very aggressive as a question. It just, you want their genuine feedback and their genuine thoughts. And oftentimes they'll open up, they'll go, oh yeah, but it's just a little expensive. And then you can go on to the objection handling, right? Which is part 5. Once you pitched and you've laid the price, then you're going to start getting some objections around price, around timing, around I need to speak to someone. Okay, and if you've done this properly at the start with your discovery, you shouldn't really run into these issues. To be honest, you shouldn't even be jumping on calls with people that are not qualified, right? So you need to make sure they're the decision maker, they have financial abilities to afford this, and that the timing is right for them before they even jump on the call. So with a lot of these things, with objections, prevention is better than cure. You can try and cure them by being the best salesperson and overcoming all these objections, but it's far easier to just nip them in the bud when they come up and actually prevent them from coming up in the first place. So if they're just not qualified or the timing isn't right, then simply delay the call until another time. But if you've done all the previous parts of the call correctly, the objection handling should be relatively straightforward. Nonetheless, you still will get some objections, I'm sure, mainly around pricing, right? And you need to be sure that you're actually getting the real reasons that the prospect doesn't want to move forward if they don't. They might say it's something, but they actually mean it's something else. And this is a smoke screen. We see this a lot, and I've seen this a lot on the sales calls that I've taken. Oftentimes, it usually boils down to price versus value, right? People don't really want to spend the money if they don't see the value in it and the credibility of you being the person to provide the solution. However, they might say things like, oh, I just need to speak to my business partner. You need to make sure this is the real reason that they're saying no to this, okay? Because it can be they need to speak to their partner. That could be a very valid excuse. But a lot of the time, people say that when they actually mean something else. So I go more along the lines of basically just truth seeking. Okay, I completely understand that. It's very important you need to speak to your partner, but just out of interest, I wanted to make sure. People sometimes say this when price is an issue, just making sure that's not the case for you. And you can also ask questions such as, if everything checks out for you and price completely makes sense, would there be any other reasons not to move forward? Because honestly, from what I've seen, 90% of the objections come from price. So you want to actually make sure that your prospects are being open and honest around this, because then potentially you could pitch payment plans or you could pitch downsells, and once again, increase the likelihood that they will be to close. But once you've handled these objections and your prospect is ready to move forward, ensure you get some form of commitment on the call, whether that's signing a contract or taking the payment. Ideally, taking the payment is the best way to do it, but make sure you get some form of commitment on the actual sales call from the prospect. And you don't want to just let them off the hook with no commitment, because then there's a chance you'll get ghosted and never hear from them again, because people get buyer's remorse very, very quickly. So as soon as people say yes, ensure that you can actually start taking action with them so they can start seeing results as soon as physically possible. So those are the 5 steps that I use personally to close agency deals for my agency Acquired. If you're interested in working with us, feel free to book a call with myself down below or join our completely free school community. I'll see you in the next one.